Coming up on the Making Waves VO podcast.
In about the third quarter or so, my cousin, he turned around and said to these Tennessee fans, just like the Civil War, retreating, right?
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves. Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
Making waves.
This is the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobbi Maxwell.
It is indeed the Making Waves VO podcast and presented by our friends at Full Compass, fullcompass.com.
We know VO.
Bobbi, this is a little bit different. This is a little bit exciting. This is a little bit fun for me and for you. We have a very special guest he is involved in the voiceover world. He does some voiceover projects, but his main job is a sports play-by-play announcer.
Yeah, I thought this might pique your interest because I know how much
course.
you love sports and I love sports. And if you're anywhere in the Midwest and you're into sports, there's a good chance you've heard of this guy. He's very talented, been doing what he's doing for a long time, and really looking forward to chatting with him about that job that he has and others. So.
Yeah, we're talking about Paul Keels. He is the play-by-play announcer voice for Ohio State University's football team and basketball team. And we're going to be talking with him in just a second. But Bobbi, how was your week this week?
Oh, how was my week? I was dog sitting in town in Nashville. It was really stormy, wasn't it? Did I tell you about I was dog sitting and I brought my equipment with me and I got down to my daughter's house and they were demolishing the house right next door to her.
Oh, no.
I mean, literally taking it down to the studs. And that was the first day. So it was like, oh, what am I going to do? They'll hear every single thing if I have to record. So I buried myself in the closet the furthest away from that house. And thankfully, nothing really came in that, couldn't be edited out or use noise. The what do you call it when you capture the noise print? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's crazy. That sucks. We always face those kinds of challenges, though, don't we?
That would have been a nightmare session. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah. Not knowing it.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Bobbi, I tell you what, let's not keep the man waiting anymore. Let's let Paul Keels come into the room. So I'm going to hand this over to Bobbi right now because Bobbi goes way back. Bobbi, would you give our guest a very official introduction, please?
My pleasure. Somebody that not only was in the same industry as I was in our hometowns of Cincinnati, but somebody who has attained an amazing level in the field that he's in. But before I even announce him, I do have to say one thing. OH!
I-O. I'm not surprised you did that, Bobbi.
I know. I've been thinking about it all week. How are you, Paul? Paul Keels.
Good. It's so great to hear your voice.
You as well. It's been a while. Paul and I were at the same voiceover conference in Columbus, and I think I'd just gotten into voiceover, so that had to have been 2016, 2017 or something like that. And I was really surprised. It's like, wait a minute, I know this guy. I know this. And Paul has I come from a large family and mostly sisters. And Paul has a ton of brothers, don't you?
Yes. And, we might be boring Kevin with all of it.
No, I love this. I love hearing all this juice about my partner here.
Well, this is the first time that we had met in person.
Right.
I was very familiar with Bobbi, having heard her on the air for so many years in Cincinnati. We had some mutual acquaintances with the station that she was at, and I'm sure she knew some of the people at the stations that I was at in Cincinnati.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of nice to finally put a person to the person that you knew over there. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Yes. Well, we don't really do much on sports in this, especially, play-by-play and whatever else you do for the network up there in Columbus. So this is going to be interesting because, as Kevin said before, it's a man with a mic, and that interests all of us. So what have you been up to? Tell us where you started, Paul, and how you got where you're at.
Oh, my goodness. Well, without making a long story long, Bobbi said I grew up in Cincinnati just like Bobbi did, and had always wanted to get into broadcasting and especially sportscasting. growing up as a big fan of the Cincinnati Reds. I'm giving away age, but I remember as a kid being a fan of the Cincinnati Royals, the NBA team that was there
Yes.
before they moved to Kansas City and eventually Sacramento. And back then in the late 60s into the early 70s, you didn't have a lot of games on TV. So you followed those teams on radio. And I was very fortunate to grow up listening to guys like Jim McIntyre, Joe Nuxall, Al Michaels, Marty Brenneman, Phil Samp, who was the longtime announcer for the Bengals, a gentleman named Don Valentino, who was the Cincinnati Royals announcer. And it was just always, for me, a great thing to be able to listen to a game, but use your mind and imagination to figure out what it looks like in your mind, what's going on. And, you know, the old cliche theater of the mind, that's what it was. And learning about the sport, learning about the players, learning about arenas and stadiums. So was very fortunate to go to Xavier University, where they had a student-run radio station, got involved in doing high school football. At that time, there was no commercial station doing the Xavier basketball games, so myself and a number of other students did that. And eventually, fast forward to where I got a call from a news director at WLW to come down and interview for a job in their news department. They'd been without a guy for about 2 weeks. I went down nervous as all get out, did the audition and everything, and they asked me if I could start the next night, and I dropped all my classes and
Wow.
so was there at WLW for a couple of years, then moved to Detroit, worked as a sportscaster and a play-by-play announcer at WJR, where I did the Pistons for 1 year, switched stations, did University of Michigan for 6 years, then through a series of twists and turns, ended up in Washington, D.C. for a year at the United Press International Radio Network, and then came back home to Cincinnati, where I started doing games for the University of Cincinnati. And then in 1998, I got a call to see if I was interested in coming to WBNS in Columbus to do the Ohio State games. And I've been here ever since 1998.
Wow. That's quite the path. And Paul, in our career, Bobbi and I, we do voiceover full time now. And this is a space that a lot of people want to get to be able to do voiceover full time. And so we often get people when we say, you know, they might be doing, you know, they might be in HR, they might be a pilot, they might be in real estate, whatever their careers are, their current careers are, they've been doing it a long time. But invariably, we will run into somebody when we tell them that we do voiceover and we're voice actors, and they'll say, oh, I was hired when I was, 19 to do a voiceover for a car commercial. And, they immediately just want to go, oh, yeah, I've done that too. But so I'm going to do that to you. So when I was a neophyte in radio, sports guy growing up, man, played ball, and then they started having me call Stamps Yellow Jackets high school football games. And I did. This is a town of literally about 3,000 folks. And so then I moved up to calling the Magnolia games. And then I moved up in radio markets and I ended up calling the University of Arkansas at Little Rock, not the Hogs, but the UALR Trojans. I called their basketball team for 1 year. And that was in 94. And Paul, I hit a crossroads, and I've told Bobbi this story. In 94, at the end of that basketball season, I was 25, I think. And I'm like, Kev, they like you. They want you to keep going. But I was at a point where I didn't like to travel, man. And so I continued just my regular radio path at that time of just being a radio personality. But I was at a crossroads at that time of possibly going full bore into sports. Now, this is leading to my question to you. Was there ever a time in your sports career along the way where you had doubts that did you think, I don't know if this is for me, and did you seriously consider another career path?
No, I did not. And I'll tell you why, Kevin, because during the midst of everything that I had going on, when I was doing games for the University of Cincinnati, the radio station I was at in Cincinnati gave up the rights, and they went to another station, and I could not move to do those. So I had a period of time where I did not have the opportunity to do what I'm doing now and what I like doing. Fortunately, having started as a newscaster and a news reporter, I fell back on that for a couple of years. But once I was away from it, I realized I knew ahead of time, but realized even that much more how much I enjoyed it. The travel is a necessary evil, and it becomes more of a challenge the older you get. Yeah. They're dealing now with the Big Ten having expanded and adding 4 West Coast schools now with USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. And those trips are brutal because what a lot of people don't know, when you travel with sports teams, they play the game and then you come back right after the game. So you could get home. Let's say, for example, last year, Ohio State played at Oregon in a night game, Eastern Conference time. And I think I walked in my door at 7 a.m. Sunday morning. and then you've got the next week, you're getting right back ready for another game. So it's a great experience when you get to go someplace you've never been, see some things you've never seen. But the travel part isn't necessarily evil. But Kevin, I know I never had that. I did when I was in college. I worked as a student teacher. I always thought that would be my fallback if the broadcasting thing never worked out. But fortunately, it did.
Yeah, everything happened the way it was supposed to be for you. That's for sure.
Hang around. We'll be back shortly.
Hello, this is Rebecca Lee. Psych, girl, let me stop playing. It's me, Rebecca Lee. You're listening to the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin and Bobbi.
Oh, Bobbi, I remember getting into voiceover, and one of the most exciting parts about getting into voiceover is buying all the gear. You don't realize that until you become a voice actor and you got to produce your own stuff. And you go, ooh, this part should be fun. But then you go, I have not a clue on what I'm supposed to buy.
Exactly.
That's why you trust your good friends at Full Compass, fullcompass.com. They know VO there, and you're going to have a great selection of pro audio gear, and you're going to get a lot of good help. And there's a lot of good attributes that go along with buying from Full Compass.
Yeah, so if you're not really sure when you got the piece of equipment and you have questions about it, they have a free 2-year service or repair plan. They have free shipping on orders over $49. I love that. I think my favorite thing is the low price guarantee, because you just never know. You said a second ago that you're getting into this and you don't know what you need, but how about, do you know if you're paying the right price for it? So you don't have to worry about that when you shop at fullcompass.com. They'll guarantee to match the price on the products they sell for new, identical, and immediately available products offered at a lower price.
They have flexible financing, Bobbi, and they also have free expert assistance, and that's why we say we know VO at Full Compass.
Everything from microphones to interfaces to headphones to mic booms, they've got it.
If you have any questions and you're more old school and you want to call them on the phone, you can call Full Compass at 800-356-5844. Full Compass and fullcompass.com.
We know VO.
Making Waves returns.
Were you an athlete before you started all of this?
Not a good one, Bobbi. I was. So I have three. Well, now two other brothers. One who has since passed away, but
right.
They were all very good athletes. And my father was a college athlete. He played small college basketball. So I was around it a lot. I did all of the pickup games, CYO, all of that stuff. But I was never any good to be at a varsity level. But always loved sports. So at a very young age, I realized if I was ever going to get involved in it, it was going to possibly have to be in this capacity. But I always enjoyed playing. For years when I was back in Cincinnati, I played softball constantly.
Yeah.
Picked up golf in my mid-30s, and I'm still trying to get a handle on that. But no, never an athlete at any kind of high level.
Did you go to Moeller?
I did, and no, I didn't play football. That's usually the next question.
Kevin, it's funny. I went to Lakota, and Lakota
Rival
was
schools?
Well, he was parochial, and mine was a public. But all the cute guys went to Moeller, so us Lakota girls would go to the games or hang out some of the places I did. Many of my girlfriends dated Moeller guys, but yeah. So there you go. Paul fits the bill again.
Well,
did you know that was happening?
Like that, Bobbi.
Paul, do you know that was happening at the time, that the Lakota girls were coming to watch your guys play football and you weren't on the field?
No, I didn't, because in the part of town that I grew up in, the girls that went to the parochial Catholic all-girls high schools, including my two sisters, went to either Regina, which doesn't exist, Mount Notre Dame, or Ursuline. So Lakota was it wasn't that far away, but it wasn't the developed community that it is now. So I did not get to know any of the Lakota girls when I was in high school. Unfortunately, Bobbi, I wish that we could have changed that.
Well, that's because we were a farm school, and our guys were farmers' sons, and then you have the athletes at Moeller's. Here's one, here's the other. Which one you gonna go for?
That's pretty funny stuff. I love hearing y'all's history and everything. I want to hear the history, though, of Paul. Part of the reason we wanted you on the podcast today is the Making Waves VO podcast, and we talk about voiceover stuff all the time, and we know you're a play-by-play announcer. However, we do know that you dip your toe and do some work in the voiceover world. I want to talk about live announcing. Have you been hired to do any live announcing events?
It's funny you asked that, Kevin, because most recently I had a chance to do something for the NHL outdoor game that was here in Columbus.
Oh, okay.
Earlier in the spring when the Blue Jackets played the Red Wings at Ohio Stadium.
Oh, cool.
I was flattered to be asked by some of the National Hockey League folks during the second intermission if I would get out onto the stage they had on the field and introduce some of the national championship football players from Ohio State. So I had the opportunity to do that. There's occasionally things that are tied to my role as the Ohio State announcer, where they'll ask you to do things for some of their events, whether it's their academic awards banquets or things like that. But a majority of it is, the pre-recorded stuff, things that the two of you are very familiar.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. Now let's get into the voiceover stuff. I know you've done some voiceover work. Can you let us know some of the projects that you've worked on in a recorded space?
Yeah, well, sure. And I thought about this leading into all of it. Many years ago, when I was still living in Cincinnati, I got connected through some folks from college to do recorded voiceover work for a company that was called Voter News Service. And it was basically a computerized system where on election nights, when people were from Board of Elections were calling in the results, they would hit certain keys on their phone and it would enter them to enter something for Hamilton County, for Franklin County. So what I did was the voiceover work, basically introducing all of the counties and introducing some of the races that the input had to be put in for. And that was something that made me some beer and poker money for a few years.
Yeah.
But most of what, and then I also, you guys will get a kick out of this. And Bobby, you may remember some of this. My father had an automobile dealership in Cincinnati.
Yep.
And so I did a lot of his commercials on radio. There was no compensation for that.
Not even a car?
He made me some pretty good deals when I had to buy vehicles. But that was something that, and for 7 years when I worked in Detroit, we were not allowed to do voiceover work. I worked for a CBS all news station, and they did not want their announcers and their voices being anyplace else other than the radio station.
That makes sense. The
They
commercialization of
compensated
it.
you well for that. But now in the last 27 going on 28 years in this role, with the Ohio State Network, there's a lot of things that have come up, regular endorsements for clients, things of that nature. But I've just had something very unique come my way that I'm going to get involved in later this week. I was contacted by an independent actor, producer, jack of all trades type of person, and he is putting together a podcast kind of recreating old radio dramas. And similar to if you guys remember the old CBS Radio Mystery Theater from years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's got a new project coming out with it's not a true crime, but it's kind of a true crime type of story. It's called The Island. And he's asked me to do one of the parts in this. It's about a 6 or 7 page script item that I'm going to be doing. Really excited about it because it's something very, very different. It kind of harkens back to some of the thespian days that I had when I was in college. But there's a lot of those different kind of things that come up, whether it's with clients, whether it's clients that are part of our network. There's some other individual media people that will ask me to do some things for some of their clients that run on stations outside of our market and outside of our state. So and as you guys know too, it is a very competitive field. And it seems like when you're really trying to get something to happen, it doesn't. And when you're not trying, it comes your way.
So true. Yeah, go on vacation, they say. Well, radio dramas are really becoming in vogue again.
Yeah, they're coming back.
Yeah, the big voiceover conference in Atlanta every year, VO Atlanta, actually had one of their breakout sessions on radio drama. So it's become a very interesting field once again. So there you go, Paul.
Oh, that's great to hear. I did not know that.
Hi, hello, greetings, salutations, howdy. This is Rob Reed, Austin-based voice actor, and you're listening to the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell.
And I love to hear this, man. I love to hear that you're stretching yourself and that, because I assume that you did endorsements, as long as there wasn't a conflict, that you would do those endorsements as voiceover, but I love hearing that you're doing a radio drama. Now, here's my next question for you, and I'm going to get back into the sports stuff in just a little bit because you and I, my man, we were in the within the same atmosphere for a period of about 4 hours this past January. So I want to talk to you about that in just a little bit. But in the voiceover space for this radio drama you're doing, have you done any training for that, or are you just kind of going on your own guts and instincts that you've learned throughout your career?
Well, Kevin, no training, number one. And number two, the part really is kind of a very conversational one. And the gentleman that I'm working with on this, he's basically the part I'm playing is somebody on one end of a phone conversation. So it doesn't really seem like it requires a lot of, getting into your acting mode, trying to get character development, things like that. That would be nice if something of that way opens it up. The other thing that, that I want to talk to this guy about too is part of this story involves a narrator. And if he's able to continue to do some things, I will express my interest in possibly some narration roles. But
Absolutely.
This is something that, at least reading the script and kind of going through it to myself, it's not something that's going to involve any kind of psych yourself up for character development, if that makes sense.
You're not going to have to tap into when you were 5 years old on the playground and on the swing set and you dropped your ice cream cone and you got really emotional, and you're not going to have to go back to that place?
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
I'm curious. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but Kevin and I do a segment called Nightmare Sessions, and it's basically about a session or a recording that couldn't have gone any more wrong because of, whether it be an audio thing, whether it be someone who is directing you. But I'm curious, in your own nightmare session, since you're on live for hours with your games, have you ever said anything on the air that wasn't supposed to go on the air, Paul?
No, not in as far as any blue language or anything like that. I do have one nightmare recollection.
Nightmare Sessions!
And this was back, I want to say maybe in the early to mid 90s, when I was doing a football game for the University of Cincinnati, and they were playing at Kentucky. And this was when the Bearcats, they'd been struggling, but they were starting to become competitive. Things started getting better for them. And they're back and forth in this game with Kentucky, and it looks like they're going to possibly pull out a win. Kentucky lines up to kick what ended up being a game-winning field goal. And when the guy kicked it, it was actually, and Bobby, you might remember the name, Doug Pelfrey, who later played for the Bengals.
Absolutely. Yep.
He lined up to kick this field goal, and it left the holder, and it looked so low that I thought it was going to be blocked, and I yelled that it was blocked. It went right through the hands of the defensive player, and it kept going and went through the end zone for a game-winning field goal. And I had to kind of retrace myself and address that. That's kind of that. Nothing from a recording standpoint. I will tell you a somewhat of a nightmare that didn't involve any vocal work. A couple of years ago, I was flattered to be asked. I've been able to do 3 book projects, and the most recent one was a children's book, and it was about Brutus Buckeye, growing up as a Buckeye and eventually going to Ohio State and getting on the football team. And so the publisher, laid out the storyline. I worked on it, got it together, got the rough draft in, and then one of the editors came and said, well, no, we need to completely change the path of this story. And I said to this individual, I said, well, the path that you're looking at is the one that the publisher said they wanted. And at that point, I really wanted to throw my hands up and just remove myself, but I didn't, and we got through it. It was kind of a pain in the rear. I would not consider doing anything for that particular publishing company again, but that was kind of a nightmare.
Oh my gosh, my brother-in-law's brother was Brutus for 3 years up there.
What?
Yeah, he was. He was very acrobatic.
It'd have to be.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Brutus, if I can go back to this past winter, I was rooting for the Tennessee Volunteers in the playoffs, and my wife and I and our daughter decided to travel to Columbus from Nashville to see the game. And we all know how that ended up, right, Paul? So you and I were in the same space for a period of, about 4 hours or so. But we got I'll just say it, we got our asses handed to us. Ohio State was clearly the better football team that night. Do you recall calling that game and remembering what a kind of a blowout it was?
Oh, very much so. Now, let's set the stage too, Kevin. What you have to remember is prior to that, Ohio State lost the season-ending game to Michigan,
Yes.
which kept them from having a chance to play for a Big Ten championship. It had Buckeye fans understandably very, very upset. There were some unfortunate things that came out of that. Ryan Day and his family received all kind of, I won't say death threats, but received some very over-the-top threatening messages, and to the point where Coach Day had to have 24-hour security around his home for about 2 weeks.
Wow.
So when that game occurred with Tennessee, now, as you know, Kevin, the Volunteer Nation settled onto Columbus like crazy.
We were strong.
And all around campus, and you saw all of the orange all over the place. You noticed it in the stadium. People still laugh about how the Tennessee players kind of tried to come out and warm up without their shirts on, as cold as it was. But that Ohio State football team, not just the Tennessee game, but through the whole run to the championship, they played angry. They played hacked off, and they came out and they just got on Tennessee right away. Immediately, Will Howard with a touchdown pass to Jeremiah Smith, and it was off to the races from there. And the other thing that it did, this being the first of the 12-team college football playoff, having a playoff game in a home stadium. It was Ohio State's first ever home game in the month of December, a night game with all of the excitement that comes with that. It was an incredible atmosphere. And what it's done now is it's led Ohio State. Now, understand that game, as far as a game management standpoint, with their in-game promotions and all of that, it was not the normal operation for Ohio State. It was all run by the College Football Playoff Committee. So a lot of the things that Ohio State normally did, they couldn't do during that game, but it made the atmosphere a whole lot better.
Yeah.
Moving forward, it's now got Ohio State trying to reassess how they can try and capture that as much as they can.
That's so cool. I loved hearing that. And thank you to Ohio State for beating Notre Dame. I'm still not over the Brian Kelly thing, sorry.
And, probably, the Tennessee game was one thing, but then the very next week they go to the Rose Bowl and they play Oregon, whom they had lost to by 1 point during the regular season. And Oregon's number one in the country, undefeated, a phenomenal team. And Ohio State went out there and just really put it to Oregon. That's the one that was really surprising. It wasn't terribly surprising that they handled Tennessee the way they did, but the way they beat Oregon, that's one that still has a lot of people really surprised and really had a lot of folks thinking, okay, now they're in a position that maybe they can win this whole thing. And they win a tight one against Texas and then have the game that they have against Notre Dame. So it was an incredible run.
And the Making Waves VO podcast will be right back.
VO news and insights to take your game from VO adequate to VO at a kick ass. This is voice actor Steve Henderson with Good Pipes VO, and you're listening to the Making Waves VO podcast with Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobby Maxwell.
As a voice actor, you want to focus on what's important, right? Like pulling off the perfect read. You don't want to stress about tech stuff. That's why Full Compass is in your corner. With 50 years experience in pro audio, Full Compass has everything we voice actors need. Mics, headphones, monitors, mixers, interfaces, DAWs, all the goodies. And their certified product experts help with everything they sell. Plus, you can get free same-day shipping, flexible financing, and a low price guarantee. See it all at fullcompass.com. Fullcompass.com. They know VO.
Now back to the podcast.
Paul, whenever OSU, whenever they lost to Michigan, I said they are going to win the national championship. I really did. And you're not going to believe this, but I even screenshot for my friend because we throw a couple of dollars around, like just for fun. Like seriously, it's like hamburger money, literally. But I immediately threw my money on OSU to win it all at that time, and I just seriously threw about $25 on it, and there it was, and the way they just destroyed Tennessee, and I'm like, yep, that's it. Nobody else has a chance, but they just look so strong. I want to go back to the game if you don't mind. Besides Ohio State playing angry and hacked, like you said. What did you see from Tennessee and how they performed that night? Were they just weren't ready for the big stage like that, or what?
I think that what you saw from, and really, again, most of our thought was about Ohio State. We had heard so much about Nico Iamaleava, and he really underperformed. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we knew in getting ready for the game is his better games had been against the lesser competition. Against the stronger competition, he hadn't played as well. The running back, and his name escapes me, he was kept very, very bottled up and wasn't able to do much of anything. And then there was one particular defensive end for Tennessee that everybody was very concerned about, especially given that Ohio State had some injuries on the offensive line. But when he was neutralized, that really made you feel that Ohio State had a chance to do well. And the home field atmosphere was huge. I will also tell you the story that, and knowing what the atmosphere was like with Tennessee fans were there, Kevin. One of my younger cousins was at the game with his brother-in-law, and there was some feistiness in the stands where they were. There was some pushing and shoving. And when some of the Tennessee fans decided to leave in about the third quarter or so, my cousin, he turned around and said to these Tennessee fans, just like the Civil War, retreating, right?
In your ugly orange.
I will have to share this quick little moment. We went with a group. I think there were 6 of us total, but, we were getting harassed, obviously, on the way out. And then my friend Crystal, she said, "Didn't you guys just lose to Michigan?" And that really shut them up. Oh, but congrats on a great season, though, and congrats on calling a great – that had to be a moment of a lifetime calling that game.
Well, Kevin, I've been very fortunate now in 27 going on 28 years in this position. It's the 3rd national championship that I've had a chance to announce for Ohio State. They've had 3 others. I really only claim 2, but 3 others that they were in that they lost. The one I don't claim is because it was during the pandemic and we had to do it remotely. Also during that time, I've seen 3 Final Fours in basketball as well. So
wow,
we're very fortunate to be there for that. It's all about the players. It's all about the coaches, but it makes it a lot of fun. And I can tell you this, too, as much fun as it was crazy with a season going on as long as that season went, with basketball all still going on at the same time, and not knowing from week to week if you're going to have to turn around and travel. So we went from Columbus against the Tennessee Volunteers to the Rose Bowl in Pasadena against Oregon to the very next week going to Dallas, Arlington, Texas, when they played the Texas Longhorns, and then turning around and going to Atlanta for the national championship game. So that's also goes back to what we talked about earlier, the necessary evils of travel.
Yeah. So what's in the future? I mean, have you ever considered going for a pro play-by-play job? I mean, I could definitely hear you on the Bengals.
Well, I appreciate that.
He's got his dream job now, Bobby.
Yeah. Well, I did have a chance to do the Bengals for 1 year in 1996. And then the radio station I was at in Cincinnati, WLW, they lost the contract. So, and then I did have, after that, I had 10 years where I did their preseason games on TV. I did 1 year in the NBA with the Detroit Pistons. And I filled in and done some baseball for the Cincinnati Reds, both on radio and television. But, this is like a pro situation here with the way Ohio State is, as you both can imagine. I learned, and maybe you guys did too, very early on, that the most important thing you can do is put your effort into the job that you have, not the job you're trying to get to. And, at this point, I'm 67 years old, almost 68. I'm closer to the end than I am the beginning. You just want to do the best of what you can with what you're doing. I'm fortunate to work with some wonderful people. So there's no thought about what the next job is. It's most of my best friends, my buddies that are my age, are already retired. I'm envious of their flexibility in their schedule, but I still love what I do.
And it sure sounds like you could do voiceover if you do continue to, just want to turn on a microphone from the little projects that you've got going on now.
That's the hope. So if you know anybody, put in a good word.
Well, that's what I was going to ask too, Paul. Do you have any voiceover dream jobs?
I don't know if I'd say dream jobs. This radio theater thing has really piqued in interest, and especially, Bobby, now that you've said that this seems to be something that's coming, I would really love to look into that. But, hopefully, at the point in time when I stop doing this full time, maybe there's still some clients that might want to get involved in having me do some things. Whether it's, voiceovers, intros, whatever. I nothing specific that I've thought of, but also having the opportunity to kind of set your own schedule. I know everybody would love to do that.
Yeah.
But, be able to enjoy life, travel for my own means, Work on my golf game to get it from being below average to mediocre. And again, also having been involved with 3 book projects, that writing might be something that could be out there. So
There you go.
but understanding too, as I'm sure you guys do, once you do get to that point where you retire, you've got to find the other things to keep yourself busy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man, it has been a blast getting to chat with you on the Making Waves VO podcast. Paul, thank you so much for your time and joining us today.
Well, my pleasure, Kevin. It's great to meet you. And I've always thought the world of Bobbi, hearing her on the air and then now knowing her in person. So I'm flattered you guys wanted to have me on to help fill some time.
Thanks, Paul. Great catching up, really.
If anybody wanted to reach out to you regarding any voiceover opportunities, how could they reach you?
The email I have at our radio station, 97.1 The Fan in Columbus, is paul.keels, Keels, at radiohio.com. Again, that's paul.keels at radiohio.com. You can also go through the station website, 971thefan.com. They've got some links where you can get connected to all of the individuals. So that would be a way to do it.
Best
That's
of luck.
a cool URL there. I like that. Radio Ohio.
Part of our previous, we were very fortunate in these days of ownership with radio stations. This was a family-owned radio, TV, and newspaper company for many, many years. The Wolf family, who were business giants in Columbus. But when Mr. Wolf passed away, the family sold it. So we're now owned by Tegna out of Richmond, Virginia, and it's mostly a TV company. But
I worked for Tegna for crime stories. They own True Crime Network.
okay.
Yeah.
But Radio Ohio was kind of the name of our radio brand, and we've been able to keep that emails.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool.
Very cool. Well, Paul, thank you again for your time and best of luck moving forward and much continued success.
Glad to do it, guys.
Thanks, Paul. Good luck.
Thank you.
Bobbi, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for suggesting Paul as a guest because all of my boyhood dreams have come true now.
I know.
No, that was so fun to talk to somebody at that level
Yeah.
of sports broadcasting because you normally can't just reach out to somebody like that has been around that long and that has done it at that high a level for so long. So thank you for your connection. And Paul, what a kind guy and just generous with his time. And that was so much fun.
It was fun. And that's why I asked him at the end. It's like, does a station, when you're that good, and he has been consistently good for so many years, what do you say, 20-something years?
Yeah, 27, 28 years.
How long do you keep someone around like that?
Yeah.
I know that's going to be a tough decision someday, or maybe it will just be on him. But gosh, more power to him. That's amazing.
Yeah, Mike Keith, the legendary Tennessee Titans announcer, just left. And he was with them for, I think it was 25, 26 years.
Wow.
But it's funny because he's going back to college. And he's going to call the Tennessee Volunteer games now, both football and basketball, just like Mr. Keels is for OSU.
Interesting.
So, So they do tend to keep those jobs for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I bet as established as Paul is, he could probably keep it as long as he wants to.
Yeah, I think so.
That kind of a vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that was just a thrill to talk about that, and it's neat to hear. I figured that he would have done the endorsement things, all day long on the voiceover side, but I was surprised to hear about the children's books and then the radio drama, especially.
Yeah, it's amazing. We all have these little genres that people don't expect. So that's cool. He's doing exactly what he needs to do to diversify.
Yeah. And if you are listening back to this episode, my man, you need to get yourself a voiceover agent and specifically let them know that what you do for a living, because several times a year I'm getting an audition for some sort of sports-related voiceover. Mm-hmm. So, like he said, some beer and poker money might be made, So, yeah, get yourself an agent, my friend, and just look for those opportunities. So that was a lot of fun, Bobbi. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was fun.
Making Waves VO podcast is presented by our friends at fullcompass.com.
We know VO.
A lot of fun today, Bobbi. Bye.
Bye. See you next time.
The Making Waves VO podcast is produced by K2 Media Productions with hosts Kevin Kilpatrick and Bobbi Maxwell. Sound design and editing by Jason Traver. Production assistance by Lacey Deline. Publicity and social media by Shannon Scott and Silas Phillips. Be sure to subscribe to the Making Waves VO podcast on your favorite platform. For all episodes, merchandise, gear, and more, visit makingwavesvo.com. Until next time, I'm AJ McKay. Keep making waves.